Hi, today I'm going to be talking about being an entrepreneur. And the Cambridge Dictionary definition of an entrepreneur is a person who attempts to make a profit by starting a company or by operating alone in the business world, especially when it involves taking risks. Now, I wasn't always one. I started my corporate career at Unilever, as a management trainee in one of the biggest global businesses in the world. And then suddenly, 3 years on, from being the brand manager of Jif, or SIF as it's now called, for the UK, I became one of the first black people in BBC radio and telly. I joined the beat for a bet, actually. Somebody bet me I couldn't. I just felt that was wrong. They said no one can join the BBC unless they've been a journalist and got journalistic experience. And I said, I'm going to give it a go. So I saw an ad and applied for a senior current affairs Radio 4 producer. And I turned down a selection panel and was called in, did a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats analysis on 4 Radio 4 programs, and somehow managed to convince them that I would be a great, or at least a first, Radio 4 producer without an experience. And I was hired to start Radio 4's brand new food program, which is still running today, some 30 years later. So I went on as a producer in Radio 4 to launch a Radio 1 program that was putting speech on Radio 1 called Studio B15. And we had everybody on that program, from Muhammad Ali playing darts with the world darts champion, to Wonder Woman, to Paul Weller playing live, Sting, just about everybody who was anybody in the 80s. And then I was invited to move to TV as a news reporter for BBC Nationwide, which is Now the News Where You Are. And then 3 months later, I was asked to be presenter, producer and reporter on BBC Two's first ever black programme, which was called Ebony. And then 3 months after that, I was asked to be one of the first 4 reporters on BBC Breakfast Time, along with Frank Boff and Selena Scott. And I was on it for 3 years, making films every day, altogether 11 years. And back in the day, there were very few BAME people in radio and television. There was Maurice Stewart, who is a friend of mine, and me, as far as I remember. And I would imagine, or you might imagine, that the BBC would really look after me because there were so few of us. They hired me as a producer, after all, and the food programme was a big hit. So what help was I given? None. Astonishingly, I was given no training, no courses at all, across all those 5 jobs, which are all very different: producer, presenter, reporter, news reporter, etc. Somehow the BBC took a gamble, hoping that I would miraculously master all of those very, very different roles. And particularly the producer one, because producers are in fact the powerhouse of programs in television. They control everything about a program, the timing. They write the scripts often for the presenters. They give direction to the presenters. They choose the content and everything. So it was a really important role, and I had no experience and received no training. So looking back, what did it feel like to be one of the only black reporters and producers at the BBC? Well, it was lonely, it was terrifying, it was scary. My blood used to fizz in my veins like champagne. I had to do things like live pieces to camera outside the Prime Minister's house in Ealing, Neil Kinnock, after covering the election at the count at Hackney Town Hall for the election. Nobody told me how to cover an election. I just had to do it and then go and do this piece to camera. I had to interview Jesse Jackson, the black rights activist who was president-elect to the United States, a bit like interviewing Kamala Harris now, in a cupboard at Heathrow Airport at 3 a.m. And I also interviewed the most notorious murderer in the British prison system the day he came out of jail. And my editor said, and you have to ask him if he killed that guy. It was terrible. I had no clue what to say. or the order in which to say it. I didn't know how to direct TV films. I didn't know how to edit radio programs. I was ignorant of the correct way to do anything, how to structure reports. I didn't know how to avoid libel. But I produced my first programme for the BBC, which was You and Yours, 12 days after I joined it, and promptly threw up afterwards. Looking back, how did I learn to do the work? Just using my brain. Loads of questions. I had a black book and I used to write everything down and ask all the questions. And I learned to be resilient. I learned not to make any excuses. I learned to show up every single day and do the job in public in front of millions of people without a mistake. So I guess the media is where I learnt the topic that I want to talk to you about today, which is what entrepreneurs have in spades, which is resilience. It's hugely important for any entrepreneur. I had to learn it at the BBC at speed. I had to be sharp. I had to be analytical. I had to solve problems. I had to observe. I had to work out how things were done, break them down, ask for feedback, work out my path. Today, the BBC takes years to train its producers, and I learnt on the hoof. And TV and radio are so fast that they're a crash course in resilience. And frankly, I didn't know what else I could do once I'd gone into that 11-year tunnel. So I just had to keep going and just keep bouncing back and not minding making mistakes and slowly, I guess, getting better. They kept paying me, and they kept asking me, so that was encouraging. But after 11 long years of stress, I resigned. And I disliked all of it, apart from radio, because it was hugely stressful. And I had no idea what to do then. It was a huge come down. But eventually, I realised that I had already transferred my skills once from marketing to radio and television, so I could do it again. So I reinvented myself as a marketing recruitment consultant. And I worked out my soft skills, which were interviewing, writing, presenting, selling, and my hard technical skill, which was slightly elderly, which was Unilever marketing, which is one of the best marketing companies in the world. And I put them together and I trained as a specialist marketing recruitment consultant with a big agency. So that's the first stage of my life. Not so much an entrepreneur, more learning to be really, really quick on my feet and bouncing back. But this is where my life took a big, massive body swerve. I got divorced. I became a single mother with a 2-year-old. I moved very suddenly from Scotland to Essex. I needed to work from home. And very often, when you're in a jam like that, when you really, really are desperate, that's when you get a vision. That's when you get that big idea. Not when you're comfortable, but when you really are up against it. And my vision that would help me was to start a business, start my business, which was called Hutton House Recruitment, which I would run from home. And Hutton House was going to be a specialist marketing recruitment consultancy, recruiting marketeers from about 50,000 a year up to about 400,000. So at the top end, I'm a headhunter. And I would work for big international businesses like Unilever, like Disney, which was my first client, and L'Oreal. And I've been running that business now for 30 years. And this now means that I can share with you how I learned to become an entrepreneur. And if anything that I say resonates with you, I want you to think, do I have any of those characteristics myself? Could I be someone like the sort of person that she's talking about, i.e. me? Do I have those characteristics? Am I somebody who could step out in faith on her own? And in these very difficult times, it may help you. And I'm here to encourage you to do it. It's not easy, but it can save your life, and it saved mine. So straight away, first of all, if you've got no money, and I was determined to start my business without any money because I was a single mum, be creative. Find a great name. Make that name clear. In fact, make it ultra clear, because when you're trying to get past the gatekeeper or the PA to the client, and you've only got a nanosecond to get her attention, your name needs to say something. So Hutton House Recruitment does what it says on the tin, and I thought of the name in my bath, and it sounds posh, but actually Hutton is the least posh part of Brentwood where I live. But it sounded upmarket, and I was able to get an illustration of a stately home as my logo. Why did I choose it? Well, because it was only me and my pajamas running this business, and I needed clients to think that there was more than that I added up to more than that. And I didn't call myself Stretch Associates, because that doesn't really communicate anything. And you need to be impactful and communicate who you are and what you do when you're trying to get past gatekeepers. Second thing I'd say is you've got to plan to win. You've got to put your effort at the start into thinking things through and planning for success, like in The Apprentice, not just going out there and doing things. Thinking is really cheap. It's just your brain. And so it's really important that you invest in thoughts and in planning. And if you haven't got any brain left, then talk to a sharp business owner and listen to what they say. You need a growth mindset to be an entrepreneur. You need to accept criticism. You need to be prepared to act on it, to take feedback. Not 100%, but to be really curious and open about it. And criticism is a chance to avoid failure. And you're going to fail many times in lots of different things. So criticism is a faster way to success. It's not negative, it's positive. When you're starting to be an entrepreneur, it's really important to set strategic goals. Being strategic is part of being an entrepreneur. You've got to think, what do people really need in this space, and what will prompt them to come to me? When you've got that, write a business plan. That really helped me. I'd worked in very big companies, but I didn't know how to start a small one. So I wrote a business plan and I put in it projected turnover, pricing, costs, and fiddled around with it all until I got a sensible figure that I was willing to earn. And once you've set your targets and written it down, then you know what you're going to achieve. And if you don't write it down, then you probably won't get there. I think it's really important to have a USP. What will make your business irresistible to other people, that will make them come and buy your product that's different to everything else out there. When I started, for me, it was working with Disney and McDonald's and Coke, because everybody wanted to work with them. No one else was doing that. And that's really important, because if you're anything like the same as your competition, then you won't succeed unless you're really amazing at selling. And trust me, selling is hard. It's persuading. It's influencing, it's explaining your idea over and over again to people who don't really want to listen to you and don't have time, and let you know that they don't have time. So it's best to be different and be able to grab their attention. Another thing I did was, and because I was a trained marketeer, was I conducted market research. I talked to all my old clients and I asked them what they hated about recruiters. That was just mainly it. I said, on all of these points, what do you hate about the recruiters that approach you? And they were only too happy to say. And then I built my business around that, so that when I went back to them, they knew that I wasn't going to be anything like the people that they normally saw. So the key was that I counted and measured the response. Because if 50% of your respondents like Y and 20% of your respondents like X, then you need to build your product around, or your service around Y. Not all responses are worth the same. And just asking questions and counting all the feedback as exactly the same is a real fault. It's really important, and it's a key attribute of entrepreneurs I've found over 30 years, to focus. I only have one focus to Hutton House. It's just cool brands. And that is a key attribute of entrepreneurs as well, to try not to be all things to all men with lots and lots of different aspects to your business. You've got to recognize your limitations. It's just you doing everything, working in the business and working on the business at weekends and the evenings. So don't offer the world, because you'll never be able to deliver it, and it's very confusing. So I just did what I knew I could deliver until I could hire people, and at max I've had 4 other staff. So however cool your idea is, keep it simple. So entrepreneurs need to be really good at marketing. So write down, be sure you can describe your product or your service in one sentence and stress test it. So ours is Hutton House Recruitment recruits marketeers for cool brands. No biscuits, no baked beans, no bleach. And our cool brand promise unlocks top talent. It's really easy to understand. It's easy for candidates to understand. It's easy for clients to understand. It's easy for the bank manager to understand. So try that on your worst enemy, or try your sentence on somebody, not your mum, and then try and develop a 30-second elevator pitch, which expands it a bit. So should you ever find yourself locked in a lift with somebody, and you've tried that on them, by the time you get to the 6th floor, they'll hand you their checkbook, and then you know you're on a winner. So those are some of the things that I found were really important about being an entrepreneur, which is working alone, essentially. A pitfall that lots of people have said to me, oh yes, but I've got no money. Well, I would say save your cash. Being an entrepreneur is about making a profit, not about spending money. So you don't need as much money or seed capital as you think. Learn to do without it. My business card was designed by my daughter's school receptionist's son. And my brochure, which went to Coca-Cola and Disney and all these cool brands, Burberry and everybody you can imagine, Lacoste, was designed by an old school friend for very little. So look around and see what you can get for free or for less. And also, pitfall number 2, skip the website until you can afford it. Use social media or use other channels. I didn't have a proper website for 4 years, and it took forever to design it and art direct it. And I'll come back to that later. So when people say to me, okay, so how did you manage to make it? What is the key to being? I've explained the process that I went about starting the business, but the key to being an entrepreneur is problem solving. It's asking yourself 1,000,000 times a day, how can I get around this problem? Remember that as an entrepreneur, you don't have business partners, you don't have advisors, you don't have staff even who you can talk over things. You've got to be able to see opportunities where other people see problems. And you've got to be able to get up every day and fight that dragon, the same dragon every morning. So let me give you an example of this. I knew my big brand clients like Coca-Cola and the BBC and ASOS would never let me use their logos, not officially anyway, to launch my business and to run my business, even when I was working with them. And I didn't want to have to take that rejection. But I needed to try and make people feel on my website, feel the brands, the cool brands that I worked for, So to get around the white space problem on my website, thought. And I thought, right, I know. The illustrators who are students today are going to be the illustrators who do the great stuff for Coca-Cola and ASOS tomorrow. I'm going to phone the professors of every arts university in London, like Central St. Martin's in Chelsea, and I'm going to ask them to connect me. I'm going to tell them I'm a cool brand recruiter and headhunter, and I'm going to tell them my problem, that I need images and cool images, and I'm going to ask them to connect me with their students. And I'm going to buy their students' art, which they're making as part of their coursework, and I'll pay a certain amount per image, and I will use that to animate and to put all over my website to give it that vibe, the same vibe as if I was using some really, really tip-top illustrator, or if I had all these logos from all the great brands that I work on my site, to make people feel this is the site to be, this is the person who can connect me with these cool brands. And so that's how I got around it, and it was great. And in exchange, I gave them the money, and I gave them a credit on the last page of my website, saying that they were featured there, which was a great thing for their CV before they graduated. Another 2 secrets that I'd like to share with you, if you're planning to be an entrepreneur, if you're thinking, well, maybe I'm going to have to be, and everybody is during the pandemic, is to get training. One, because you have to be a subject expert at things that you're not expert at, like being a lawyer or being an accountant, because you're going to employ these people externally. So after a nasty hiccup with a bookkeeper, I took a weekend accounting course at the Holiday Inn in Brentwood, and I got to understand corporate accounts so that I could talk turkey with my accountant when he did my corporate accounts. And I also input every single receipt that I've ever received myself into the spreadsheets so that I know where the money's gone. You've got to be financially literate if you're going to start a business. It doesn't matter what the job is. And also, you've got to spot opportunities and listen, as even in training. And I remember when I started, I realised that I needed to understand how to run a small business. So I went to a tiny management course run by Chelmsford County Council. It may have been Essex County Council, I can't remember, but it was in Chelmsford. And it took 3 weeks, and I sat there and I was bored witless for the first 2 weeks. And then it got to the third week, and suddenly I heard the tutor say, you know, credit terms, the time that it takes for your clients to pay your invoices, can be set at 30 days, or they can be set at 60 days, but it's really important you get it right. And I suddenly perked up and I said, are you saying that I can set my credit terms at any length of time I want, and I could get the money in faster if I set it shorter? And he said, yeah, I guess so, if you could make it stick. And that was my secret, because liquidity, actually being able to get money into a business, is what keeps tiny businesses afloat. So that day, I determined that I would set my credit terms at 15 days, even though I knew I was working with billion-pound companies. And I went to Disney, and I went to L'Oreal, and I went everywhere. But most importantly, when I started with Disney, and I said, my terms are 15 days. And I made that stick, and I got that agreed before I started talking about all the stuff I could do for them. I asked them to think of me like a kind of family pet, and they did. And I worked with them strategically for 10 years without stopping. So that was important, because I got my money in twice as fast, 3 times as fast, 4 times as fast as any other supplier. And that is a huge, huge thing to have done, and helped me stay liquid for a long time. So also be prepared to ask for help. So one of the things that I did, because I ran out of brain power and how to generate my business after the first 20 years, it really becomes hard. So me and 4 other lady entrepreneurs got together and formed a group called Dragonesses, the Dragonesses. And we were a bunch of female entrepreneurs. The Dragonesses was a sort of mini board, and every 3 months we'd go along, we'd have a coffee together, and we would present our achievements for that 3 months and our plans, our marketing plans for the next 3 months. And then each of us would rubbish each other's plans, and we'd also suggest a stronger way forward jointly for each person for the next 3 months. And we'd ask each of us to set a series of targets, and then we'd go away and implement it, and then we'd come back and report back. So we were accountable to our board. This was fantastic. I got loads of new ideas, and just one of those sessions saved my business. Absolutely. Entrepreneurs have to be confident. They've got to influence people. But my advice to you is to be bold, but to be normal, to be open, to be personable, to be authentically yourself. And I learned that when I was in the BBC. Most people in business and most people in life are actually quite bored. And they respond to authenticity and people. I got my first Disney appointment, my first Disney commission, because I was talking about being pregnant with somebody who knew somebody who was at Disney, and I offered to help them understand how I got Fridays off as a recruiter, and I sent them a little booklet, and they were so grateful. They said to me, Mary, you're a great recruiter. I can't use you, but in 6 months, I know that Disney is setting up in the UK, and I'm going to recommend you. And 6 months later to the day, I got a call from a senior vice president of Buena Vista Home Entertainment, and I worked strategically with them, as I said, for 10 years. So if I'd been formulaic and not me, and not talked about things like being pregnant at the end of my presentation, I wouldn't have got there. So I'd been out of recruitment. I shut my business after about 10 or 11 years, and I did my degree at Anglia Ruskin, in fact, and became a teacher. And but I went back to my business and reopened it, and I'd been out of it for about 7 or 8 years. I had no clients. I had every chance of failing. I needed a better brand vision. And this is something that is really important if you're going to be an entrepreneur, is always be prepared to refine your idea. Don't stick to the same thing. You need to adapt. So I decided then to rebrand. As I'd been working with Disney and Coke, I thought, what if I only work for cool brands? What if I come up with the hottest idea to make marketeers who love brands, who actually build brands, make it irresistible to them. It would be also irresistible to my clients and stakeholders, because it would get these top people. Because marketeers might work on Domestos during the day, but at night they dream about Apple and Burberry. And if I just did that, I'd get all the best ones. So I knew it would work. I had passion. I believed it would work. I felt it was bulletproof, and it did. And if passion is a bit tight, get yourself a business mentor. My business mentor for 30 years has been Sir Raymond Monbiot, who's an amazing guy. He's now 80. And he used to say to me when I felt totally overwhelmed by working for businesses like Disney and L'Oreal and Lacoste, he'd say to me this. He'd say, Mary, most people, especially in business, don't do what they say they're going to do. So all you have to do is to be a little bit better than average, and always do exactly what you promise. You don't need to give a Rolls-Royce service because you'll go bust. But if you're just a little bit better than average, you will do very, very well. And that helped me enormously navigate that feeling that I was David and they were Goliath and they would crush me. All I had to do was to be better than most people. And I did do very, very well. And I got clients like Puma and Primark and Lacoste and ASOS and London 2012 Olympics and Diesel and Bose and really, really cool brands. That has gone on for about 25 years. And I used all these entrepreneurial skills and all this resilience that I developed in my early career in the media to start my next organisation while still running Hutton House. And that is the charity group Calilight. I got a vision. I feel very strongly about refugees. I speak fluent French. And I built Calilight and founded it 4 years ago. What it is, it's a car sharing convoy that takes ordinary people from the UK to Calais just for the weekend to feed and support the refugees who are stranded there and trying to get here, working as volunteers for the 3 main grassroots charities there. And I started it with no money. I went there for the weekend. I realised that these charities are desperately short of volunteers. And as I left there, I swore that the next time I went back, and I was going to go back, I would go back with 30 people so that they could bank on having enough people that weekend to do the work that they needed. And I came back and I just rang up all my friends and I said, do you want to come with me? And Calilight was the name I thought of. It's simple. It's what is said on the tin. And then I realised I needed to send out some information with a corporate email. So I looked around for a graphic designer. And after a couple of trips, we book everything for everybody. So we book the cars, we book the hostels, we book the accommodation, we book some great nights out. We do all the liaison with the charities, and we do it really, really cheaply. But I realised that somebody needed to be the boss. And at that point, I hadn't thought about me. But it was an entrepreneur boss that was needed. So I'd gone through the process. I looked at me and I looked at my limitations. It was just me, and I was also running a business. I looked at the competitors of other convoys and their strengths. And I made these 2 problems, if you like, There was just me and there were some competitors into an opportunity. And I decided that our USP to distinguish us from all other convoys was that we were going to be a light touch organisation, hence the name Calilight. Our proposition was going to be vastly different. We only take manpower and money, not things. So we're not interested in taking old chinos and bags of toiletries or anything like that. We just take people to do the work and money that we collect. So we are weekends only, digital only, low fuss, low paperwork, low chat, low ag. That's low aggravation. And people love it. Men love it. Young people love it. It's easy. I love it because it allows me to be the boss. It allows me to be firm, and no one seems to mind because we book everything for everybody. It's dead cheap and it's huge fun. And it's been going for 4 years. We've taken 600 people, and GoFundMe has just chosen us as their charity of the week, which was huge. And in running it, I've been entrepreneurial. I've been curious about new ideas. So it makes it more fun for us to try new stuff. So we've partnered with other convoys who've learnt the ropes from us. We've used the Catholic Church newsletter in Essex, which gave us access to 800,000 Catholics who can be recruited to come with us. We're currently partnering with the amazing maternal charity Pregnant Then Screwed, who have helped us get lots of baby clothes for refugees here in the UK who have become mothers. The huge pharma company Pfizer gave us £40,000 worth of vitamins that were about a year out from their sell-by date for the refugees over in Calais, because I knew somebody who was a senior director there. You just have to ask. People are willing to help, and that's part of being an entrepreneur. And Lululemon, the activewear company, just a couple of weeks ago, have donated 34 yoga mats for trafficked women here in the UK who are learning to do yoga in their safe houses during the pandemic. So being an entrepreneur, whether it's for a charity or whether it's for a business that makes quite a bit of money, is about taking risk, and it's about never ever being down. It's about resilience. You can't be an entrepreneur without it. It's an entrepreneur is always believing, always trying to get a way through, always trying to get around the next problem, find the next connection. And when the going gets tough, failure just cannot be an option. You've got to find a way. You've got to bounce back. I've had 4 different admin people 1 minute, and then the next minute, nobody. You've just got to battle through and work and train outside your skill set. You have to be tough. You have to ask questions. You have to think daringly. You have to ask firmly. You've got to stop apologising and stop asking for permission. And you've just got to believe that everything is possible. I'm a Christian, so I've got God on my side, which has been a great help. It's not pretty sometimes being an entrepreneur. Sometimes it comes easy and sometimes it doesn't. I've suffered. It's done my head in. I've cried bitter, bitter tears. But my final tip to you is always to keep your integrity. Don't lie. Don't exaggerate. Always try to keep your basic goodness in any situation, because there's always a way around. Learn to take the heat. Learn to ask for help. Learn to keep adapting, keep refining and evolving your plan. It will work. I wish you good luck. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for your time.